All right. Hello and welcome to Just Animals podcast. I'm Elle, and with me, as always, is my dad, aka Guy.
Hello, Pod World. It's good to be back.
Yes, and back with us again, the one and only Dr. Dre. We are so stoked to have her back on the show already. Definitely a friend of the show and probably one of my personal favorite guests on the show. And today we're going to be talking about not hyenas, but a same continent though. But we're going to be talking about the meerkat today, or if you've seen The Lion King, Timon. Right? Timon was the meerkat? Come on, Dr. Dre. You had two animals. You've worked with two animals in The Lion King.
Yeah, but I guess I don't use Disney as my source of reference.
Wait a minute. Lemurs. But lemurs are primates.
Meerkat.
Oh, meerkat. Sorry, not lemurs. Meerkat. Sorry, wrong animal.
Completely different.
Just miniature carnivores.
Oh, that's true. So meerkats. Let's get into it. What's their scientific name?
Suricata suricata.
Okay, they have this thing, and does that just translate to meerkat in Latin or Greek? Or?
meerkat, yeah, except it's with one T the first time and two T's the second time, which I don't know if that's official or there was a typo at some point in history that just stuck.
They're mongoose. I just read
They're mongoose, right.
I didn't know that. So do they eat snakes? Another
species and call it suricata suricata.
Oh,
carnivora.
That's like a song almost. Yeah. Okay, that's like teaching a kid their consonants.
Okay, so hold on. What is a herpestidae?
Herpestidae. It's the mongooses.
Oh, that's what the mongoose is?
So is that the family or their genus then?
Family.
The family.
Okay. Thank you. You're not the expert. Quiet you.
I'm looking at Google.
Yeah, no, that's correct.
So what's average size of your typical meerkat? Height, weight, or length, I guess. Weight.
1 to 2, depending. So females are larger than the males, and then the dominant are larger than the subordinate. So a big size difference. Yeah.
Well, hold on here a second. I just found something out. That there are meerkats in North America. I thought these were African animals. I didn't know they were in North America.
They're not.
Meerkats live in wild areas such as deserts, scrublands, savannas, grasslands, forests.
That's a prairie dog.
Some North American meerkats can get food from urban places and take the food back home without getting into danger. I feel like
you're talking about a prairie dog.
That's not a meerkat.
That's not a meerkat?
No, Africa.
Okay.
See, the expert knows. Anyway, so what's their average weight? How big are they? Like cat sized or?
Oh no, they're smaller than cats. Yeah. So and a dominant female can be twice the weight of a subordinate male. So
wow,
there's a range.
Right.
Yes, dimorphism in the opposite direction, and then also what's called intrasexual phenotypic divergence, or that's when you get dimorphism within the sexes as opposed to dimorphism between the sexes.
Wow.
So that's a trait that's common / characteristic of cooperatively breeding species.
Okay. Wow.
Can they walk when they're upright? Do they walk on bipedal?
No, that's just when they're
sniffing around.
No, they sniff on all fours, but they scan the environment and perform sentinel behavior by making themselves taller. So either by sitting on their haunches or standing up on their feet or climbing on whatever happens to be the tallest thing in their environment. So as to look out for snakes or primarily aerial predators.
That makes sense. So what's their average lifespan, like wild versus, captive care?
I'm not sure what a captive wildlife is for a meerkat, but in the wild, again, the average, it depends on who you're talking about. So subordinate animals. So they're a cooperatively breeding species. And what that means is that within any group, you have those that breed or monopolize breeding and those that help raise the young of the breeders. And so meerkats fit that definition. So it has three main features. The youngsters born into a group delay their dispersal. So when animals would normally leave the group to go and have their own families. Cooperative breeders delay that, so they stay behind for several years so that they can help their parents primarily raise the kids, the future generation. So that's one characteristic. The other is providing the care, the alloparental care. So in some species, subordinate females can actually nurse. So yeah, and then so they feed the pups, they raise the pups, they help raise mom's kids essentially.
So they can nurse without giving birth to the actual baby?
Correct. Sometimes, so going through either a pseudo pregnancy or they go through a pregnancy, but their offspring are killed. So infanticide is a common, So they're sexy because they do all sorts of aggressive, nasty stuff. But they're known as cooperative and helping and altruistic. But there's a lot of underlying.
We'll touch on that in just a moment. So obviously, these are found in Africa. Where did you study them, and specifically in Africa?
In the Kalahari, so in the southern tip of the Kalahari, so just at the border of Botswana and South Africa, in an area called the Northern Cape. And for those who are familiar with Meerkat Manor, BBC's famous series, it's that population that I worked on.
That's right. You worked with the Meerkat Manor population. That is right. I forgot about that.
Do you call them a mob, a gang, or a clan? Because according to this thing I'm looking at, their community they list all three of these. So what do you say?
I personally call them a clan, but mob and gang is stuff that you see in some of the older literature. Other people just call them a group, but I think that sort of lacks specificity. So yeah, they live in groups that can number up to 50 individuals.
Yeah, that's what it says here.
Get quite large, or they could be quite small. 4 or 5. But they definitely need more than one female and one male to raise their kids, and that's because they live in a very harsh environment in the desert, in the Namib. I mean, in the Kalahari. So it's a very harsh environment. They get all their food essentially by digging for it. So they're digging for insects that are buried sometimes very deep down. So scorpions are a particular treat, but you really have to work.
Okay.
Yeah, you have to work hard to get a scorpion. It's no easy feat.
Yeah.
And those insect populations that they prey upon are very dependent on rainfall. So you can imagine in the Kalahari Desert, rainfall can be very limiting. So animals have to spend a good chunk of their day going off and foraging to make a meal, to gain the weight that they need. And at the same time, that makes it very difficult to raise your kids in an underground burrow or den. So they are what are called obligate cooperators, meaning that a single female cannot successfully raise her litter and survive. And so she has to have helpers. And so one of the reasons people study them so intensively is because cooperative breeding is kind of a bizarre phenomenon. And it sometimes manifests also. So delaying dispersal, alloparenting, and then the third trait in common is some degree of reproductive suppression. Meaning that whoever lives in the group, there's typically only one dominant or alpha pair who breed, and then everybody else kind of doesn't. Mm-hmm. And so those are the 3 characteristics that all cooperative breeders share, but the way in which they suppress their reproduction is very different across groups. So some groups suppress reproduction by beating up on each other.
Wow.
Right? To put it bluntly. So aggression can be, or, killing the other females young. And others have figured out a way to actually cause infertility in the subordinate members. And so in its very extreme form, you get something approximating the eusocial insects, which is the naked mole rat. So I don't know if you've done a show on naked mole rats.
No, that is on our list, though.
Because they're really cool.
Yes.
A little penis with teeth.
Yes, that's exactly what they look like.
I have a question for you about the family. I know you said there are going to be a lot of members.
You're really stuck on this family thing.
Yeah, so are those members of a mob or a clan all related? Are there any like married, son-in-laws or daughter-in-laws that come into the clan?
They're most so the breeding pair, the alpha male and the alpha female, are not related, and they breed and their youngsters grow up in that group and essentially stay there for a few years.
Yeah.
So the vast majority of them are related. They're kin by blood, right? Mm-hmm. But you also get other animals from neighboring clans that come in and join. So you do get a number of immigrants who would be unrelated. And it's those unrelated animals that offer a breeding opportunity for the subordinates. So that's one of the main, a contributing factor to suppress the reproduction of the subordinate members or the helpers is what's called inbreeding avoidance. And so from their own behavior, they avoid mating with kin because their offspring would not be as healthy. So that's a contributing factor. But there are these other aspects that contribute to suppressing their reproduction.
Do the clans fight like the Hatfields and McCoys? Or
yes, yeah.
So definitely. We have Meerkat on Meerkat crime. Before we get in
Meerkat wars, yes.
Yeah. Okay. Before we get into that, so they're burrowing. Is it like a tunnel system? Is it just like a den, or is it a mix of both?
It's a mix of both. They don't create the system. Like many, they take over an abandoned aardvark burrow, and then they further excavate it. So it's an underground system that would be made up of, tunnels, lots of different openings, which is part of their protection system, so that they have different ways of escaping. A snake comes down one hole, they can get out the other. Mm-hmm. So it's a system of tunnels, and then they excavate. There are larger dens, so to speak, within that tunnel system where multiple animals can sleep. So they have dens, these major resting sites dispersed throughout their territory. They'll use the same one maybe several nights in a row, and then they might move. Sorry about that, Dexter.
Oh boy.
Sorry about that. He has something to say about everything. Then they might move on to another one. But then also throughout their entire territory, they have what are called bolt holes, which are these smaller versions of these tunnels that they can scoot under to escape an aerial predator. And they can have upwards of 1,000 of those spread throughout their territory. So they're very susceptible to prey, even though they're carnivores. They're rodent-sized, so they make a good meal for a large bird, right?
Yeah. It'd be a good snack. So then, what's their typical, speaking of them being carnivores, what's their typical diet? I know you said scorpions and insects. What else are they? Okay.
So centipedes. They'll take a gecko, so they'll eat some small vertebrates. They'll eat birds or eggs or anything essentially that they can get their hands on. But for the most part, they are adapted for digging. So they have this very long toenails, fingernails, claws, essentially. Not fingernails, sorry. Scientific error, claws. So, they come equipped with their shovels. There are lots of little shovels, so they're very efficient diggers.
Oh, okay.
And they use that to further excavate their dens, their burrows, but they use it to dig these elaborate holes in search of hidden prey.
So let me ask you a question. When you were doing your research and you were in the desert, Kalahari Desert, right? Mm-hmm. Were you in a soft structure, or did you spend your time in a hard structure at night, when you went to your shelter?
Oh, hard structure. Yeah. Okay. Any fool can be uncomfortable in the field.
That's true. Okay.
Cool. Okay, so let's get so we've kind of just what's
there's a farm, a farmhouse with lots of different buildings attached, and there's an army of researchers there. So some are in caravans, but no one's in a tent for the most part. Everybody's in a hard structure or a proper building.
Now, if I remember correctly, the mongoose was introduced into certain areas to eat snakes. Is that correct? Was it to deal with snakes?
They were introduced into Hawaii for, was it for snakes?
Or rats or something like that?
Rodents. What I remember was that they introduced a diurnal species to hunt a nocturnal problem animal, and that just caused all sorts of havoc.
Yeah,
we're good. We are good at doing that.
Yeah. So instead of going after the thing they wanted it to go after, it started going after all of the native ground dwelling birds. Yeah, that was a nightmare.
Our friend from Hawaii that we've had on the show, he's a biologist. Cats are a big problem. Feral cats are just decimating certain bird populations.
Right.
So, but, people don't want to euthanize cats for some reason. But anyway, that's a whole
other, yeah. Know what you're talking about.
Okay.
All of Baja California is like that.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's true too. So then, if what happens, I'm assuming, scorpions, they're poisonous. Can they withstand getting stung a few times, or how are they digesting that poison?
They rip out that stinger. That's what.
To get rid of that. But that's an interesting question for how they feed their young, right? Because since they help, that's essentially what the job of these subordinate males and females is to do, is to feed the youngsters, and so they feed them these scorpions, but to sort of get them on the same, to get them to learn how to handle a scorpion. Right. At first, they give a completely dead scorpion, and then a less and less and less dead, mostly dead. So
right. Half dead.
Like a multi-part.
Semi-dead.
Semi-dead,
right.
Mostly dead. Yeah. But so that they can learn how to handle that whole situation.
Okay. Wow. Yeah. So when they're feeding young, do they? I'm assuming since they're mammals that they what is the word I'm looking for? Breastfeed. Yes. Do they do kind of like what penguins do as well? How the penguins will regurgitate into the baby penguin's mouth or whatever. Will they do that as well to give them?
No, they don't do nutrients? The regurgitation. So wild dogs do that. So so wild dogs are also cooperative breeders, and they'll go off and they'll have to chase their prey for a long distance and then ingest it on the site, bring it back and regurgitate it, bring it back in the form of regurgitating. But the pups, at first they're born underground and they stay in this natal den for like 3 weeks. Mm-hmm. And they have babysitters. So the a couple subordinates stay behind and monitor them and feed them to the best of their abilities. While the rest of the group has gone off to do their daily digging, right? To get their own food. And then they come back at night. And after about a month or so, then the pups start joining the whole group as it goes off to forage. And so then these are pups that don't know how to dig on their own. So they're with the group and they're just begging the whole time. And it's very kind of annoying. A freeloading squitter, yeah. And the subordinates are coming and giving them meals throughout the day. So a subordinate digs, gets some insect and runs over to a subordinate pup and hands it to them, and the pup eats it. And so that's what happens. And meanwhile, the little pups are sort of the juveniles. They start learning how to scratch the ground, and they'll start learning how to dig on their own and gain independence several weeks later. But they go through this whole phase where the subordinate members, the helpers, are feeding them and have to provision them. But it's not through regurgitation. It's through actually digging up something, finding it, and then running over and feeding it to them.
Okay. So now how dexterous are they? Because they seem very, hands-on. I mean, between digging and, grabbing their food, are they kind of like humans with their hands, or?
No, because their claws are, so they're not like squirrels. Like if you imagine a squirrel holding and twisting its nut and going, right?
Right.
No, they're not dexterous in that manner at all, because they've got these 9-inch nails, essentially.
Sounds like a good name for a group.
That is that is a group.
How about that?
Yeah, because they're not nails and they're not 9 inches, but you get the picture. Right. So they it's like asking if Edward Scissorhands is dexterous.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay. So it's like it's kind of like they can palm stuff. Okay. So then, with their claws, crap, I just forgot my question now about their claws. Is claws the correct term then?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So what happens if they break one? Is that like a death sentence for them, or will it just grow back?
Grow back.
Okay. Because I know something, like if your dog's nail gets like messed up, sometimes they have to pull it out and like that's it. So then, if they're with their digging and whatnot, these little, like, how deep are their little, like hiding holes that I forget what the term you used, but where they can just kind of, run for cover and come back out.
The bolt holes, how deep are they? They're just, gosh, they're not hugely deep, but they're enough to get away from a hawk or an eagle. That's what they're trying to get away from.
Sure.
Snakes, they're not going to escape a snake because the snake goes down. So snakes are actually responsible for, a lot of the pup early mortality.
Okay. Okay.
So yeah, it's not really the depth that's protecting them so much as just having shelter, something between you and the sky.
Right. So then what do they feel like? I'm assuming you've handled one at some point.
What do they feel like?
Yeah.
Fluffy.
Well, yeah. So working at this site, the reason that the BBC could film and get all of that amazing footage that they get on that show is because the entire population is habituated to human presence. Right. And so essentially from the day these pups emerge from their underground burrow, the natal den, they are habituated to humans. So you put your hand down there and let the pups sniff them out and get used to it. And then they're handled. So these animals are trained to get onto electronic scales so that their weight can be read 3 times a day, every day.
Wow.
What's the purpose of 3 times a day? Is that like, okay, they didn't eat?
Something that I was reading in these 101 facts about meerkats. It says they can lose 5% of their body weight overnight.
What?
Right. So basically, one of the things that's very difficult for field researchers to do is weigh their animals. And weight is a really potent way to figure out how healthy your animal is, right?
Sure,
and how energetically costly a certain activity will be. And so if you weigh them and you get a starting morning weight, and imagine you have a babysitter staying at the den and you have a forager that's going off. So exact same age, 2 siblings, one stays behind and one goes off to forage during the day. You measure their weight at the start of the day. Let's say it's equivalent. The babysitter stays at the den taking care of the pups while the other guy's going off and feeding and stuffing his face. You measure their weight throughout the day, and by the end of it, what you have is an estimate of the cost, the burden on the helper for having given up essentially a day of feeding to sit and take care of someone else's kids, right?
Pass.
And so weight is a really nice way to get your hands on that. For myself, for the type of research that we were doing, we were trying to estimate where a female was in her pregnancy so that we could determine, is this female in the first trimester, second trimester, third trimester, because the research we were doing was manipulating hormones in the third trimester.
Right.
Weight allowed us to do that. So you get these, you get these animals on the scale, and they're sort of hovering at a certain weight, and it turns out that about 30 days gestation, you can detect that you can start seeing that weight gain, that inflection point where they start gaining weight. That is pup weight. That it's their fetus weight, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to ask you, in order of priority, from most important to least important, what would you say would impact the reproduction? Would it be availability of food? Would it be the presence of predators? Would it be obviously they need water? So what is the stack ranking of what items would affect the population of reproduction population?
Well, clearly how much food there is. So how much rain is a major factor. So if you don't have rain, the population numbers plummet, and groups go extinct. So clearly, if you don't have insects, you don't eat, you die. So that's number one. But in terms of figuring out, like within a group, which individuals reproduce and what gives them the reproductive advantage, those things would be weight of the animal and the amount of testosterone that a female has. So this is
interesting.
What we were finding. What's really unique about these females, these dominant females, these badass dominant females, is their chock-a-block full of testosterone, more so than in males.
More than males?
More than males. So the dominant female, not the subordinate, she also has high T, but it's equivalent to what the males have. You basically have dominant and subordinate males and subordinate females who all show equivalent testosterone concentrations. And then you have the dominant female, and she's like
off the charts.
Yeah, she's off the charts.
So I think human females have some testosterone.
Not that much.
No. But where is it? What gland is producing it? Because
so the likely candidates for most females is the adrenal gland, but you also get the ovaries that produce a precursor to testosterone called androstenedione. And so females can. So there are two glands. There's the adrenal gland, and then there's the ovaries, and those are both sources of androgen for females. And yes, all females have androgens because you have to have androgens in order to get estrogens. The precursor to estrogen is androgen. Everybody talks about androgen as, quote, the male hormone, and estrogen is, quote, the female hormone, but it's hogwash, because you can't get to testosterone without going through progesterone, and you can't get to estrogen without going through androgen. So
what is the cause and effect aspect of this? In other words, do they become the dominant female because they're producing a lot of testosterone, or do they produce a lot of
argument that that's the argument that we were making through our research. So the reason we wanted to find out what the timing was in gestation was because we found out that these dominant females have the highest androgen concentrations in the third trimester. So when they're in the late stages of gestation, their testosterone is through the roof.
So are they extra vicious then? Are they like?
And they're extra precise, exactly. And so what they do with that androgen. So all female meerkats are capable of infanticide, and so even though a subordinate is subordinate, she can still kill the dominant female's offspring. And a subordinate female who's pregnant becomes like the triple threat, right? Because
they don't throw her out of the clan for killing. Well,
she's also saying they beat the shit out of them too. So
the dominant female evicts subordinate females, particularly if they're pregnant, when she's pregnant and when she's in the late stages of pregnancy. So her being ramped up on androgens is a mechanism to make her aggressive, larger, meaner, badder, so she can kick out these females who are likely to be her daughters from previous litters.
No. Sounds complicated. It sounds complicated.
And so she kicks them out, and when
get
she
your
kicks
shit and
them
get out.
Yeah, get your shit and get out. She sends these animals out to the gulag, and so these, where that's a major stressor. So if you're a social animal, you're an obligate cooperator, right? You're obligately social. You get ran to the freaking gulag, and you're pregnant. So that's a major stressor. So then what ends up happening is that these females abort, because there's no point continuing to invest in a litter that's doomed. She cannot raise those kids by herself. So Mother Nature does what Mother Nature does, which is to stop her from investing further in something that's just a waste of resources. And so she ends up aborting.
Does the male get kicked out too, or
the male's not important in this story.
Okay, no problem.
So what's the gestation period?
Teasing. The male does not get. The male doesn't really get evicted. He will, if you're a subordinate male, your options, particularly since you're not reproductively suppressed, these males have the same testosterone concentrations as the dominant male, but all the females in their clan are sisters, essentially.
No, that's not really going to work.
But what he does is he goes on these prospecting trips to look for unrelated females in other clans. And subordinate males actually, this is a successful alternate reproductive strategy for subordinates. They actually father 20 to 25% of the pups in the population from going to neighboring clans. So their reproduction is suppressed relative to the dominant male, but they still father some kids by sneaking out at night.
So alpha female, will she kill a subordinate female, like especially during that third trimester, if she's just like, okay, I'm done with you?
Not so much killing, but they target certain females for aggression, and it gets so unpleasant to the targeted female that the targeted female leaves the clan. That's what essentially what an eviction is.
Okay.
And if she's pregnant, she'll likely abort, or if she gives birth, her pups still won't make it.
Right.
And once she's lost her litter, she might be able to come back and reintegrate into the clan, because since she doesn't have the extra mouths to feed, she's no longer so much the threat to the dominant female.
Right.
Does the Meerkat sheriff come and say, get out, you're being evicted?
The Meerkat sheriff is the alpha female.
Oh, okay.
So when they're doing that, so what do they feel like though? Are they kind of like soft? Are they like soft like a hamster? Or are they kind of like scruffy?
No, they're more like a little bit more like a wired hair terrier.
Oh, okay.
So they're not soft. On the underbelly would be softer always, but they're I'd say kind of like the mane in a spotted hyena, but then you wouldn't know what that feels like either.
Yeah. Kind of like
a wiry dog.
Okay. Yeah. So then back to the Miss Big and Bad. So when they, what was I going to say? Oh yeah, actually no. Let's talk more about how they're scoping out behavior. Like that's like probably the most, when you think of meerkat, you think of the meerkat standing up,
little sentinel behavior, yeah,
right, and them not doing like Meerkat Fight Club and all of that fun stuff. So is that strictly just for protection? And then don't they have like special lookouts, and won't they like switch? If I have that correct,
they have sentinels and they have turn taking. So there's a whole suite of cooperative behaviors that these animals perform, which is one is to constantly renovate the den and keep it healthy and structurally sound, right? So they're constantly doing this cooperative digging. So it's literally, nose to tail in a chain gang. The last one, I don't get it because it must be the most miserable position. You're just getting
just
kicked in the face by all the sand. Yeah. So they do that in a chain gang, and that's one form of cooperative behavior. The other is to take your turn being a sentinel, so standing guard, because if you imagine your whole family is out there with their nose in the dirt and their butts in the air, right? So they can't see the predators above them. So that's the point of having a sentinel, is to alarm call, is to watch and keep track of any risk and then alert the rest of the group.
Okay. Yeah,
and so they will go on watch, and they'll stay on watch for varying amounts of time, and then they'll come down and someone else will go on watch. So they take turns. And then of course the babysitting. So someone staying behind at great sacrifice to their own personal weight gain.
Right.
How about their need for water? Does
well, their need for water is met largely through the insects that they eat.
Okay.
I mean, it's not like they'll turn. So one of the ways to train them to get on these scales and have their weight taken 3 times a day is to have a little hamster water bottle with you and give them a sip of water. So, so yeah, they
water ration the meerkats.
Well, we don't water ration them. We've got global warming for that.
We're water rationing everybody.
Yeah.
So what's their gestation period then? I mean, since they're smaller, is it like a month or 2, or
it's 70 days?
Oh, that's pretty quick.
Yeah, and I mean the dominant female is pretty impressive because she can actually give birth and then very shortly thereafter get pregnant again. So she can actually support lactation and concurrently be gestating.
Wow.
Subordinate females can't do that. So a dominant female could have between 1 and 4 litters a year.
Wow.
Average 2 point something.
Okay.
But a subordinate can't get more than a litter a year. And so a subordinate won't get pregnant in quick succession the way the dominant female does.
Right. Okay.
But, yeah.
So then I'm assuming that they have some type of communication. I mean, I'm assuming when it's like, hey, there's a hawk, like, are they squeaking at each, I don't know what the meerkat call is, but is there like a warning signal and then like, I'm going to fight you signal, or
there's a lot of different vocalizations and alarm calls and a lot of cool research that shows that they convey in their alarm call the urgency. Like,
okay, right. Like this is a code
there's
red,
a walk
code
in
red.
the distance versus, look up, it's
right.
like, yeah. So they have modifiers that convey the urgency of the threat. So yeah, lots of research on the vocalization and the communication system that they have. Yeah.
Okay. So let's get back to this meerkat warfare. So I guess my dad brought up a good point. Will they go to war with other meerkat clans and just be like,
absolutely,
we need more bugs, get out. we're commandeering your land.
No, they have their territories and they fiercely defend those territories, and they have
no kidding.
Yeah. Essentially inter-clan warfare. And so that's other mongooses do this as well, and they they'll come in and kill the pups of another group. There's a lot of killing of babies in this. Everybody thinks of meerkats as these cute little critters, but
okay, but they're just little baby killers. I mean, lions will do that too. We've talked when we did our lion episode. I know like a new male lion will take over and he'll kill the cubs of the previous male lion. Mm-hmm. So try to like wipe out his strain, but. So they'll punish the other group, like, we're taking your spot and we're killing all your babies.
Yeah, they'll fight over land. They'll invade. They'll maim, kill. But they've also kidnapped, which I thought was really interesting. So we had one of these clan warfares, and instead of killing the pups, they stole the pups. They
and like held them for ransom, like
Did
1,000
enslave
termites.
them and stuff?
The pups got raised in the other clan, which really messes up your experimental design. By the way.
Yeah.
Wow.
Like, oh my God. Yeah, wait, so how does that work then? I mean, so they weren't like, okay, look, 1,000 termites for this one, 2,000 termites for this one, 6 scorpions for this one.
There was no ransom. They had no intention of giving them back.
They don't come back. They don't come searching for the kids. They just say, oh, thanks.
Well, the thing is that if you're smart, you do it when they're not around. So I don't know that they actually, knew, but they will be, their territories are adjacent to each other. So sometimes they bump into each other, and that's never good. But yeah, they do these incursions sometimes. And
that's
so it's
insane.
It's just,
so if two clans see each other, they're always going to fight? Or they're just going to, if two different clans see each other, they're always going to fight, or they're going to say, okay,
so it's on site for them. Like the minute I see you, it's going, like it's game time.
Yeah, I mean, possibly unless you have a real difference in the numbers, right? Mm-hmm. If you're clearly going to get your ass kicked, it might behoove you to turn around and go back to where you came from. But
so who are the fighters? Are all these dominant females going out to kick ass, or do the males just hang back?
One dominant female per group, and yes, she will be at the forefront, and
she's leading the charge.
He will lead the charge, and when it's all said and done,
and the men are back in the burrows, I hope.
No, they're there. They're completely integrated.
Yeah, but when their fighting's going on, the men are in the burrow, or the men are out there
fighting. They're fighting too.
They're fighting too.
True equality in the meerkat world.
Yeah. Right. So the dominant female is higher ranking than her mate, but the dominant male is higher ranking than the other males. And yeah, he does play a role in defending the clan, but the dominant female, the matriarch, is really going to be the leader, the influencer, the decider.
Right.
Did you ever think about how mysterious or wonderful how animals have survived for gazillions of years, and with all the quirks and stuff that they've had, and outside influences of environment.
Obviously, with beating the shit out of each other and kidnapping. Obviously, that's how they survive.
I wonder about it every day.
I suspect that there's some Darwinism in there in terms of survival of the fittest. But it's just, I mean,
trying to understand. So cooperation is one of your key examples of that. It's like, how do you get a system where some individuals will actually forego reproducing to help someone else raise their kids, right? That's one of these things. So it's all about inclusive fitness. It's like saying, okay, well, if I'm not going to be any good at raising my own kids, then I'm better off, genetically speaking, by helping my kin raise theirs. Right? That's what inclusive fitness is. And so that's how you essentially explain these weird systems where on the surface, it seems like, well, this doesn't make any sense. Why would you raise someone else's kids?
Right.
But the someone else in the equation is kin. And so you're born, your mom is the high-ranking queen bee, and you're not any good at it because you're inexperienced, or you're getting beaten up, or whatever. So it's better than going off to the gulag by yourself and trying to make an attempt at it, which you will do under dire circumstances, right? When you have no other options, you will try to do that. But otherwise, you stay behind and help. And, the nice way of looking at it is that, okay, well, I delay my own reproduction, and in the process, I learn how to become a better parent. Right? There are potential benefits that you can gain from being a helper, even if it means that you start your own reproductive life later.
Well, yeah, you learn how to model mothering behavior, I guess. You learn by viewing.
Yes. But so that said, a subordinate meerkat lives a lot less year-wise. So you were asking me, Elle,
their lifespan.
Earlier on the lifespan. For a subordinate, it might just be a couple years. I mean, mortality is pretty high. And for a dominant breeder, I think I'm not sure what the record was, but she could be dominant for nine plus years.
Wow. So that was my next question too, was like, when it's time for like a new HBIC, if you will, does it go to like the daughter, head bitch in charge?
Oh, ha ha ha.
Does it go to the daughter? Or do they do like Meerkat Fight Club to determine, or is it a little bit of both?
It mostly goes to a daughter. And so what happens is that you have a pseudo hierarchy among the subordinates, which is determined by age and weight.
Okay.
So really, if you're bigger, you have an advantage. Right. And the argument that we're making is that androgens help make you bigger and get that advantage because you can compete over a contested food item and win it more likely.
Right.
But yeah, so it's typically a daughter from an older, heavier daughter from the dominant female who becomes the beta, who is the beta and becomes the alpha who inherits. Okay. But if you have, let's say you have competitors that are sort of equivalent, they can alter their growth rate to match that of their competitor. So that's pretty cool. But yeah, in the lifespan of a dominant female, she might produce some 80 pups in her lifetime, whereas an unsuccessful subordinate might produce none.
Wow. So then I was noticing too, I was watching something, are they radio or GPS callers or a mixture of both? Like some of them are huge. It's like you have, they'd have like a ball and chain on their neck.
It's the dominant female who has a collar because she's the most important animal in the clan. And so she's the likely one to survive. So to track the groups from one day to the next, we rely on the collar of the dominant female. But yeah, as technology improves, you can make these things smaller. And what's happening, which is going to reveal a lot of cool stuff, is following animals that do leave the clan. And, where do they go? Do they all die, or do some of them successfully set up new? And we know the answer that it's a little bit of both. Some of them die and some of them set up new clans and become dominant animals in their own right.
Okay, so then how do you collar a meerkat? Because it sounds like they'll just turn around and rip your face off if they're like, especially the dominant female. She's like, you're not putting that shit on me. I don't want, we're fighting now. You want to know
how a capture happens with meerkats? I mean, these animals are so habituated that you literally walk up to them, you gently pick them up by the base of their tail, and you put them in a nice little cotton, like a pillowcase. And then you carry them over to your car and you put a little mask on them and you nicely put them to sleep on the anesthetic. And they're that habituated that you can just go up and pick them up. And this was the beauty of working at this site. It made the kind of work that I was doing, where we were manipulating the hormone levels in these pregnant females. So we know androgens, what we gave pregnant females anti-androgens and essentially made their offspring turn out to be like the offspring of subordinate females.
Oh, so then did they kill that offspring? Because it's like, you're not going to...
No. They just, the offspring weren't as aggressive as if they had been born to a dominant mom.
Okay. So did the offspring come out fighting then? Like, hyena cubs, where they're just like, okay, WWF SmackDown time, let's go.
Yep. And so the offspring of dominant females are more aggressive than the offspring of subordinate females.
Okay.
So if you give a pregnant meerkat anti-androgens in late gestation, she stops being aggressive to subordinates. She stops evicting other subordinates. She loses her centrality in the clan. The other subordinates start becoming more competitive, more aggressive.
Oh.
And then by changing the endocrine milieu, it actually affects the development of the daughters, and they become less aggressive as well. And that's what tells you that it's androgens that are being selected for and making the female aggressive so that she can pass on her reproductive kingdom to one of her daughters.
Oh,
so you've never seen... So I think I heard you say that the dominant female babies are more dominant than another female's babies.
They're more aggressive. Yeah.
They're more aggressive. Wow. Mm-hmm. Have you ever seen a case where the
baby on baby crime
female had the aggressive one and overtook? No, it just stays in the lineage.
No, but remember, these subordinate females also have impressive testosterone concentrations. So I'm not saying that they're being prepped by their hormones early in life that may or may not be called upon into action later in life. So it's the way that hormones act. They can either have an immediate effect, you hit puberty and you become annoying, or they can, you've had exposure to hormones in utero and it has a very delayed effect. And these are two different ways that hormones exert their actions. And so it is the case that subordinates also get exposed to unusual androgen. The subordinate moms are also bathing their daughters in an unusual testosterone bath, but it's just not as much as what a dominant female does. So the advantage is...
It's not environmental training of the dominant female.
No, she's not training them be an asshole.
No, but I mean they're learning from her, but it doesn't still overcome the birth position. Or
it's actually the beauty about studying a cooperative species is that the dominant female gives birth, but others raise her. Mm-hmm. And so you actually take out the confound of what the dominant mom isn't really doing much of anything in terms of rearing her offspring. So she's not training them to be like you would see in a primate group. They're not learning from mom. Oh, mom will come to my rescue when I get, beaten up by, no. They're being raised by animals that are all essentially of equivalent status. And that's the beauty, because it's saying whatever difference in behavior you're going to see in these youngsters, it's going to be due to their maternal effect in utero.
Okay.
Did the women beat up on the men?
There's no sex difference in aggression, which is another characteristic of a so-called masculinized female, right? These females they fight just as hard as the males do. As pups, which is pretty remarkable and unlike what you would see in other mammals. Yeah.
It's that damn testosterone. It just messes us all up.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, it makes everyone kind of crazy. So before we wrap up here, before we wrap up here, what are you saying?
I wanted to say that this is fascinating. I never knew that meerkats were so badass in terms of the matriarchal
Disney
situation.
Really downplayed them, like significantly.
Well, because they're so cute.
They are cute.
They're very cute. I would like to cuddle one, but it sounds like it'd rip my face off, so maybe I'll watch one from afar. But favorite meerkat encounter or moment before we wrap up here?
Favorite, well, it's so wrong, but I'd have to say spending a day with the babysitters and pups when they emerged was pretty gosh darn special.
That's so cute. And they didn't get weird you being around the babies? They were like, intruder.
No, wow. No. I mean, it's not like we were, jumping around and screaming or anything. We were just lying there very quietly. But yeah, just sort of watching that up close and personal was pretty special.
That's nuts. That is so cool. So then what kind of collars were you putting on them? Is it satellite or GPS or both? Or like a mixture?
It's just a radio collar.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But some people are putting on different things to last longer and track farther. But the sort of routine is the dominant female gets a radio collar and the rest of the clan does not.
Okay. And does she get weird when she wakes up and she's got her chastity necklace on all of a sudden? It's just like,
No, I mean, I'm sure that collars annoy animals with all the scientists around the world slapping these collars on animals. But, they're meant to be a weight that the animal can, that it's not
too cumbersome or too invasive
or too heavy or too whatever. And the reason to put them on the dominant female is that we know we can always find her, and if the collar needs to be changed or what have you. But if you put collars on a male that's going to emigrate, then that's no good, right?
Right.
Oh,
so,
but is that what the purpose of the collars is, to see where the clan is roaming, or to see how
that where, you drop them off at night, you find them the next morning, but it's not like you're with them 24/7. So so once you've left them during the day for a nap, and then you go back out in the afternoon, where do you go? Right? You have to be able to find them. And so that's what the radio collar is for. And then also we try to give them a break from humans. So it's not every day.
Right.
Not
just
so,
hey, meerkats.
Do you have a little...
you watch a group for, on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, but between Monday and Wednesday, they could have switched groups or dens or what have you.
Do you have like a little meerkat cam, where they have a little camera?
Well, they have their own show, Dad. They have Meerkat Manor.
No, I need to check that show out.
How have we not seen this? It's been on for like over a decade.
Haven't seen it. I'm into Ted Lasso now. I don't know if you're into Ted Lasso.
They've actually started up again, a sequel or follow up.
For Meerkat Manor.
Yeah.
Okay, and then so really quick, when the collar falls off, what happens? Or like, have you ever like gotten a signal for a collar and then you go there and it's just the collar just laying there?
Collars die, so yeah, you have to, so you try to stay on top of your game and switch out old collars before they fail. But your group, your animals, where they go, so you'll be able to find them eventually. Mm-hmm. But you don't want to have to traipse around for hours on a regular basis. Right. If you're trying to collect data and so forth. So yeah, it's known the collars fail like anything else. But for the most part, you can find them again. They have territory, so they're in here somewhere.
Right.
Every single den has been mapped. So if they're not at point A, they could be at point B, C, D, or E.
Gotcha. Okay. Right. Okay.
You can find them.
Right. Well, thank you so much for coming back, Dr. Dre. This was great. Who knew the meerkat was, this feisty little mongoose? Yep. I mean,
what other animals you have in your bag of tricks?
Repertoire?
Lemurs.
Oh, you do have lemurs. Those are primates. I didn't think they were primates.
My God. He's really stuck on that. Sorry.
Well, you know what? In the next session, if we do have a session, a lemur to me is nothing like a primate. I think of primates as a chimpanzee. Those are old primates or something else, but they don't. Yeah, I need to maybe get my hands around what a primate really is. I know a mammal.
Dead giveaway is the hand.
It's the hands. Okay.
And dead giveaway.
And they have opposable thumbs, lemurs?
No.
Oh.
Lemur is not a mammal.
No, it is a mammal. What are you talking? They don't lay eggs.
The lemur is a mammal. Sorry. I thought we were talking about meerkat. I'm sorry. I mixed it up.
Meerkat's also a mammal.
But you know what? That's the teaser. For the next episode. We're going to talk about primates.
Okay. Well, yes, thank you so much for coming back, Dr. Dre. If you have any questions, send us an email. Don't forget, find us on Instagram, Just Animals Pod. Also, if you could kindly leave us a review and rate the show on whatever platform you listen to, that will help our algorithm and help this show get more exposure. And thanks as always for listening. We'll see you guys next week.
All right.
Bye, everyone.